What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Monday edition of Back Your Play with Q. I'm your host, Rich Quinones. As always, we're brought to you by our very good friends over at Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clements Road in Deptford, New Jersey. Winter is among us, and they've got all the skiing equipment and so much more. Don't forget, if you stop in right now, you tell them that you heard the ad right here on BYP with Q. You'll get 30% taken off or added to your buy. And as we welcome in our good friend Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 The Game, part of the Broad Street South Network. So Championship Sunday is behind us. The Super Bowl is set in Vegas. It'll be Kansas City. It'll be the San Francisco 49ers. And we have to start with the NFC side of the ball. My Detroit Lions, who, for all intents and purposes, spit the bit in the second half and losing to San Francisco. And really just kind of the national sports story today occurred in that 34-31 loss to San Francisco is the play calling and really just almost the collapse of the Detroit Lions in the second half. And everyone's highlighting and going back to Dan Campbell's decision to go for it not only once, but twice, fourth down situations. He could have easily elected to kick a field goal to go up 17 in the game. And after that, the momentum swing in the third quarter, the house came down, the fumble, the goofy plays, the drop again. So look, I mean, we'll go all through the gamut here, but I guess first and foremost, 49ers get to win 34-31. Obviously, Detroit covers the number. 49ers go back to the Super Bowl. But if you're Detroit and if you're Dan Campbell today, I feel for that fan base. I mean, they have to be absolutely devastated to lose a game like this, a game that, for all intents and purposes, they had total control of this game at 24-7, coming out of the locker room, 24-10. But again, the turning point, 24-10. There's about 11 minutes to go in the third quarter. They elect to go for it on fourth down. It's an incomplete pass to Reynolds. He should have caught the ball. That would have made it a 17-point game. It would have been, in essence, at that moment, Lloyd, 27-10. Maybe you've got San Francisco taking shots. Defensively, you can do different things. Instead, the 49ers get the ball. They go right down the field, short field. They score to make it 24-17. Lions fumble the ensuing possession, and the 49ers come right back and tie it up. Brand new ball game. So let's start there with that first decision by Dan Campbell. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, Q, you and I talked about this in preview. You talked about his aggressiveness as a good thing. That this is a new NFL, and he typifies this, and he was going to use that to ride the wave to kind of beat the conservative Niners. Well, it kind of bit him in the butt, and I'm yelling at the TV. I'm like, kick it, kick it, kick it. When you have a lead, it's about possession, it's about getting scores, and but this is who he is. Dan
Correct.
Campbell to he lives his truth. So he went right to the podium. He said, you know what? I would basically do it over again, same way, and he's better than me because I would have taken a point, especially when you have that lead, you have that 24-7 lead going into the half, after the half. And then we know the Niners have had a lot of difficulty in comeback situations, particularly if they're trailing going into the fourth quarter by 5 or more points. Shanahan was 0-30. So that's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, they're going to have the lead of 5 more points. The Lions are going to close this out. And then, like you said, it's just agonizing for all those Lion fans out there. You saw them in their stadium watching the game, in the dome, and they were all excited. And this was going to be their first time going to the big dance in the Super Bowl. And it was just agonizing. It was like paper cuts over and over again. And, they probably should have trusted Badgley a little bit more to make some kicks.
So a couple of schools of thought here. It's 4th and 2 on the San Fran 28. That pass should have been caught by Reynolds. It should have been caught.
Oh, I mean,
right. So I've gone back and forth with my buddies with the analytics and the old school and the thinking and the logic, and I understand both sides of it. My one argument to support Campbell's decisions, this is who he is. We talked about it all season long. This is who he is. He has no problem if it's 3rd and 9 to run it for 3, 4, 5 yards and go for it on fourth down. I'd have to go back. I think there were 5 games by Detroit this year that were decided by 7 points or less. I think a Chicago game, the Chargers game, Kansas City game. There were a couple more. The Dallas game, which was the bad call with the tackle ineligible. I have to dig deeper to see how those fourth downs played out. Okay. Talking about conversion rate. Now, the other argument
Yeah,
on
well,
top. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, real quick.
Yeah.
They were about the NFL average was 50 some percent on fourth down conversions, but the Lions, as you said, did it better than anybody. It was around 70 to 73% they were converting fourth downs.
Right.
So that'll give you an idea.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we know, I think the Giants were right there going for it on fourth down. Their conversion rate stunk. And then Carolina, which was a bad team because they had to go for it on fourth down because they're constantly playing from behind. So this is who he is. Is it also possible now, the second fourth down play, it's not Jared Goff, right? That's not who Jared Goff is. If you blitz, put pressure on him, he's not going to make the Mahomes Jackson type of play with his legs. That was a bad throw. Okay. But if you take a step back and you look at the analytics and you look at the math, and this is the new age NFL, I'm wondering if you look at this game in total, I've supported Campbell in this regard. Now I'm playing both sides, mind you. I'm hedging the thoughts here, so forgive me, because they were able to run the ball, and they also, maybe to a man, thought to themselves, let's just try to end it right now, right? Let's just put them out of their misery. They're not coming back, down 24, let alone, down 17, let alone 21, right? Either way, it's 3-possession game, but I think defensively you can do some things differently. Okay. Where I'm supporting him even more is that also players have to make plays, man. So again, in total, when you look at that game, after that ensuing possession, the fumble, you had the ball bounced off the DB's hands into Ayuk. You had the lapse with trying to down the football on the 1-yard line. So there was a magnitude, and I guess that's the avalanche snowball effect. But this is who he is. So I think you talk about the human element and we try to rationalize the decision. And again, I'd have to go back and look at every drive chart and every single solitary game. And I have not done that yet to kind of support my thoughts and my opinion on this and going forward, because I've gotten a lot of pushback on it. With all that being said, now this is where I'm hedging. With all that being said, it's the NFC Championship. By his own admission afterwards, he came out and said, I just don't know if we're going to get there again. Okay, so by his own admission, he's basically telling you, man, we really let a golden opportunity slip right through our fingers. And that's where I can turn around and say, you did it once, it didn't work. You tried it again, it failed. And I can point out several other, for instance, taking the timeout with a minute to go. You're burning a timeout. You need.
Yeah, he ran the football there.
Yeah, 3rd and 1, they ran the foot. You're down 2 scores. I mean, you could at least have. So I understand. I've been going back and forth with my buddies. I understand exactly where they're coming from. I understand exactly where I'm coming from. You're coming from, other people. My buddy is a diehard Lions fan. And I text him and I said, man, brutal. All he wrote back to me is, they were the better team yesterday. I don't mind going for it. The drops, fumble, stupid reception off the face mask. They were all killers, period. So he gets it. But I'm trying to make an argument for, and I'm trying to make an argument against. And the old school guys will sit there and say, it's stupid. You take the points, take the points, take the points. Where the analytics say you've got a 90% to pick up a couple yards here. And again, you live and you die by the sword. So I'm going to throw one more out to you. I also believe that you have to read the room. And there's a difference between being aggressive and thinking, fuck it, we'll just go for it anyway. Like, read the room. Look where you're at. You're in the NFC Championship, man. You might not get this opportunity. So I'm trying to make cases for and against without talking out of both sides of my mouth. So do you agree with anything I'm saying?
Some of it, but I was a little league coach, so so, a little difference. This is on the biggest stage, Q, and he just had his chance to put his foot on their neck. Obviously, okay, they went for it the first time, and Reynolds, as you said, that was an egregious drop. I mean, right in his hands. He had another drop on third down as well. He had a terrible game. And you're right, the good teams find a way to win, the bad teams find a way to lose. And you know, they came out on like a house on fire right out the gate. Jamison Williams with that big long end around touchdown run. It excites the team. Go into the locker room up 17 points, as you're saying. And I think Campbell was really feeling himself saying, you know what, we got these guys. Let's just end them right now. They're on the road. They have the home crowd against them. Everybody was silent. And they were like, you know what, let's just shut them up and end this game. And you're like, okay. They tried for
There's
it,
no
didn't get
guarantee
it.
that he's
But
making a 45-yard field goal either,
yeah,
by the
well,
way.
and they have their second string kicker. Their kicker they waived their first kicker, and the money badger, Badgley, that's his nickname. He's missed some big kicks over the years. I'm surprised that's the guy they went with. There's just so many kickers out there on the market, and all these guys, like in the AFC Championship games, both those guys are pretty much automatic. But Badgley, he did not trust him. And I think he also did not trust Aaron Glenn's defense. We talked about them earlier, a defense that allowed 23 points per game in the regular season, and they had difficulty stopping people, and you saw that he was like, okay, I trust my offense more than my defense. And the defense had been doing a great job before then, but then they leaked oil and they fell apart. So, hindsight's 2020, as Campbell said in his press conference, in hindsight, maybe we'll look back on this and I shouldn't have did it. But true his nature, as you said, he wanted it, he went for it. And that's going to be the story of the game, unfortunately. I mean, there were a lot of great performances. Particularly, you talk about that IU catch was something that we're going to see forever. They always talk about one of those plays,
but
and that was one of them.
Let me stop you for a second. But that's about players understanding at that moment, here's my chance to make a play. And the DB didn't make a play. Here's Gibbs's chance to make a play. Just hold on to the football. Instead, he fumbles the first carry after the fact where the 49ers cut the lead to 24-17. He fumbles. 49ers get the ball right back. What did he do? Score. At that moment, the game was over because even at 24-24, what happens afterwards? The Lions punt. The 49ers kick a field goal. Now let's go to that second fourth down. Now you've got 4th and 3 from the 30 as opposed to 4th and 2 from the 28. And I'm shocked they didn't even try to pop off or run the ball. I mean, I can even go back 2nd and 10 from the 37. They didn't run it. 3rd and 10. It was a dump off to Brown for 7 yards. So again, why not run it on first down? Come back and run it on 4th down. 49ers scored right after that. And for all intents and purposes, 34-24, even though Detroit came back and scored, it was too little, too late. So I hear everything you're saying, man. And I'm of the old school belief where take the points. I've always been like that. But as you watch how the game in the NFL has evolved and these guys are getting coaching gigs because they're aggressive. And now we've got the analytics, the Bill Jameses of football instead of baseball. We've got the analytics. To me, you can equate it to a manager who maybe leaves his reliever in too long, right? So, and it bites him in the butt, or I'm going to pull my starter after seeing the lineup the third time around. But this is where that part of my gut, in my heart of hearts, knows when I wake up tomorrow, his decisions were wrong. After I say everything that I said and I hedge a little bit, and I hate wavering and flopping like this, I do. But this is where that little part of me wakes up and says, this is why he was wrong. I can live with you doing that in September and October. I can live with you doing that because that's who you are and you're going to stay true to that. But we're talking about the Detroit Lions, who never have trips to the playoffs, who never have trips to divisional rounds, who never have trips to the NFC Championship, who are outplaying the 49ers. So even if you take the points and you're up 17, you've now forced maybe the 49ers to abandon the run a little bit. You can blitz a little more. You can give up the middle. You can let them chew and take off clock, right? Possession for possession. and you can maybe force Purdy to do something he doesn't want to do. And that little part of me will probably wake me up tomorrow and say, this is why he shouldn't have done it. But there's a big part of me that says, hey, man, it's the human side. It's who this guy is. And, I, you know, I feel bad. I do. I mean, I feel bad because I thought they were outplaying the 49ers. You can run the ball against the 49ers. I'm not taking anything away from their comeback and Purdy making plays and the like, but man, it was right there. I mean, I can't imagine being a member of that Lions organization now, waking up today or tomorrow and going in the offseason because, again, Lloyd, he said it himself, we don't know if we're going to get back there.
I mean, when you get that close, it's just like, oh man, I still remember the Eagles the first time they went to the NFC Championship game in St. Louis. They're playing
Rams.
against the Rams. Very close game. McNabb throws a pass at the end. Could have been PI. Freddie Mitchell could have caught it, and it was the same kind of situation. Young upstart team, and they're like, we're not sure we're going to get back to this situation again. And you have to live for that moment. And you tip your cap to the Niners. They're a veteran team, talented team. They found a way to come back in this one. But Q, when you start crunching, I'm looking at the stats.
Yeah.
Detroit only held the ball for 27-48 in this game. So, when they had that lead, as you were saying, they probably should have ran it a little more, And then they're 1 for 3 on fourth downs. They're 6 for 12, which was not bad on third downs,
down.
but they had one fumble lost and he had one interception. The Niners had none. So, we always talk about that turnover
drop passes,
battle.
the penalty, not down on the football, the fumble, not coming up with a pick.
And it's an avalanche, and it just all adds up. And it was excruciating for Lions and their fans because they had the lead. You figure you're up 17 points. There's in the NFL, college is different. College, you see teams come back real quick. In NFL, typically, they'll learn how to shorten the game, milk that lead, and just get out of there with a victory. It doesn't have to be pretty. But, Ben Johnson, the guy who everybody's talking about, maybe the next Commanders coach,
Yeah.
his play calling is a little suspect in this game. And then Dan Campbell, as you said, he had the big decisions in terms of whether to kick it or not, whether to go for it or not. And like on that third down, I don't know who called that. They went for that running play, and the guy in Montgomery gets stuffed, and then they have to use their timeout.
Yep.
And then basically they scored a touchdown, but they only had 2 timeouts left. Then they have to go for the onside kick, which we know,
exactly,
it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Craig Reynolds got his hand on the ball, but unfortunately, it was before the 10-yard rule. And the Lions, we'll see if they're going to be able to come back, but there's just so many situations where a team has a hot season and they're just not the same group the next season. We saw that with the Philadelphia Eagles this year. Last year, extremely hot, probably had the best record in the league going into the Super Bowl. They lose the game. Everybody's like, oh, they'll be back, but every season's different. And you just saw this season the collapse of that team. And hopefully you don't see that with Detroit. They're young. They got to figure out some contracts here and there. But we'll see if they come back or not.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Eagles first go around. I remember too, the clock management was horrible in that game. I mean, they just took forever those last couple of series. And, as a Giants fan, I can only equate yesterday to 2002, 2003. Forget about the Super Bowl against the Ravens. I can complain about the hold, which wasn't a hold on Hamilton that negated a return for a touchdown, a pick. Collins had an awful game coming off that great NFC Championship against the Vikings. But the Giants go into Candlestick, and they're at 24-something odd points, and it was an utter collapse, right? And they ultimately lose that game. It cost Jim Fossil a year later. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Dan Campbell's on the hot seat. He's done a heck of a job. But I think, I don't know, the mentality now going forward, do you change your ways a little bit, or you just continue to coach like you've always coached? Players still have to make plays, right? The receiver has to catch it. The quarterback can't, the running back can fumble. Special teams down the ball on the 1-yard line. The DB make the play. That's what it's your moment, right? There's a couple of those plays in a game where it's your time. You're paid to do one thing. And listen, and give the 49ers credit, man, because even today I'm listening to these talking heads. What more does Purdy need to do now? Does he have to just go out and outshine Patrick Mahomes and beat Kansas City in the Super Bowl? Like, is it because the kid was Mr. Irrelevant? I mean, hell, he's 20 of 31. He got sacked a couple times. He had one touchdown, one bad pick. Okay, threw for 267. But then, oh, by the way, his legs made some very big plays, some key third down runs, some scrambles here. The Niners as a whole ran it for $155 for about 4.7 a clip. I'm sure you got it in front of you, but I don't know, why are we still looking at this kid saying he's a game manager? I mean, all the kid does is he just wins.
Gee, that's crazy. I mean, everybody needs to get past that. He's in his second season. He has proven that he is a legitimate NFL quarterback. And I don't want to hear it's all his weapons. It's not him. He had a lot of gumption, a lot of grit in that second quarter. He did not the second half. He did not play very well in the first half. And then you saw him run the ball for 46 yards, and it became a lot of that over my dead body. And he showed his athleticism on those runs, keeping the chains moving around the pocket, making jump passes. I mean, that one that he threw over the middle and the receiver kind of one-handed it. That was a huge play because they needed to move the sticks, and he did what he needed to do. And you know, he's a great quarterback. Every quarterback that's not that first round bonus B, there's always going to be this question: is he the guy? Was Drew Brees? Everybody said Drew Brees was always too short. Russell Wilson, his height came into play. Kurt Warner, a guy that was a former undrafted free agent. So, I think the question marks need to kind of go away with him. And he had Deebo Samuel play this game, which was huge. Deebo had 8 catches for 89 yards, and he's smart. He is leaning on the guys around him. Christian McCaffrey, 20 rushes for 90 yards, 2 TDs. And the Niners are a tough, complete team. We'll see what kind of game they give the Chiefs coming up. But, they put it together. And most teams, we've seen it around the NFL. You talk about the new NFL Q. A lot of these teams, once they get down, they're done. They kind of roll over, especially in that big situation. We've seen it before. Think about the Seahawks just drubbing the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl a number of years ago. That type of situation where a team is just like,
First play
what?
of the game changes.
It's over. Yep. Yeah, it's over. I'm done. You know what I mean? And you're right. After Williams scored that touchdown, they had the momentum. And we talk about, Big Mo being with the team, and
Right.
the Lions definitely had it. You know what I mean? They had it rolling. It was coming downhill. And the Niners somehow were able to turn that around. Obviously, that Gibbs fumble was huge, and it just gave them hope, and they attacked them after that.
Yeah, so we mentioned this on BYP and also on Q. I said to you, and I mentioned it as well on Martinez and Company, that Monday going in, is Shanahan going to get tight? How aggressive is Campbell going to be? Well, we saw the answers, right? The second part of that was when we were talking about the AFC side of the ball, and I specifically said the narrative Monday is going to be what? Lamar Jackson comes up small, or Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. And look how it played out yesterday. Now, granted, it's not all on Jackson. Baltimore's loss yesterday against Kansas City. But I thought yesterday you had a franchise in Kansas City that pretty much reminded everyone around the NFL that we're not even close. We're not even close to being done. And the word that comes to mind, or lack thereof, that occurred yesterday in that game was composure. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens simply lost composure. They had bonehead penalty after penalty after penalty, talking about, hey, we're going to make him pay if he slides, the extracurricular activities, the hits, the flagrant fouls, the personal fouls, the roughing the passer. They're just stupid penalties. And to me, that all comes back to what? Coaching. And in the end, it spelled a 17-10 loss in the AFC Championship. Kansas City gets back to the Super Bowl looking to repeat. And the Ravens, I mean, that's a total collapse, man. You're arguably the most dominant team during the regular season. Everything's going well. You got Lamar Jackson going to be the MVP. We know yesterday will have no bearing on the voting, nor should it. It's a regular season award. But the franchise quarterback, once again, came up extremely extremely small. So he didn't play particularly well. Harbaugh got out coached. They lost their composure. And speaking of the coaching and getting out coached, the fact that they refused to even run the lousy football was beyond malpractice on their part. So let's start with the lack of composure yesterday in that 17-10 loss.
Yeah, Q, it just, you had the veteran team that had been there before in these situations, and they went there. They knew Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and their unit. They knew it was a business trip, and they went in there, put their head down. They didn't mess around with all the talking and the pushing and the shoving. He said, "You know what? We're going to go here, take care of business." And you saw right away they came out the bat. Mahomes, I think he was 12 for 12 to begin the game. I mean, he was on fire, and you could tell it was like, okay, this guy wants it. He's a veteran. He's been there before. Yes, they were 11-6 in the regular season, and they had all those drop passes, and things were falling apart at a certain time. But they put all that behind them, put forth a great effort, Q, as you said, and Baltimore just kept shooting themselves in the foot. Lamar with that bad fumble in early in the game, that kind of turned things around. And then late in the game, he threw that interception into triple coverage. I don't even know what he was seeing there. He threw that ball up there. Obviously, Zay Flowers, you feel for the kid. He dove for the goal line, but when you stick that ball out there, it's in harm's way. It gets knocked out, and then there's a big touchback rule that you and I have talked about. But I think the biggest thing Harbaugh's got addressed, Lamar, even the whole team, they had 8 penalties per 95 yards, as KC only had 3. So you're right. They just kept, it was a situation where they were the worst enemy. So everybody's going to say Lamar now 2-4 in the playoffs. Can he get it done? And it's going to be a referendum on him and Harbaugh. And everything was set up.
I thought it was.
They were at home.
I thought this game was. I look at Lamar Jackson now.
Yeah.
Great regular season quarterback. Don't get me wrong. Wonderful skill set. But he's not a winner. Like, I'm sorry. He's not a playoff caliber quarterback. He does not rise to the occasion, and right, wrong, or indifferent. Now, I'm also the one that went on the record and said the Jets or Washington need to go out and pay this guy. I was also the same person after he's banged out last year, didn't like the fact that he wasn't traveling. You're the franchise quarterback, and we're talking about numbers and contract and the accessibility. He played this year. He was out there. He was engaged. He had a hell of a season. But for some reason, come playoff time, I mean, yesterday in that game, everything was this: 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards. Everything almost like passes behind the line of scrimmage. Like, to me, that's also play calling. And Lloyd, to your point, they ran the ball 16 times. Now, we're going to take 8 away from Lamar Jackson. How many of those were design runs or RPOs or just me running for my life and scrambling? Take away the 54 yards. They ran it 3, 2, 5, 8 times for 27 yards.
Yeah.
And again, the Chiefs team that's susceptible at times to the ground game.
Yeah.
At times.
And we know the Ravens all season had the #1 rushing attack in the National Football League. Their running backs ran the ball 6 times for 23 yards. So Todd Monken, their offensive coordinator, he's got to answer this. It's just like, what were you thinking? Why wouldn't you attack them using the run? And the time disparity shows that Kansas City held the ball for 37-30. Ravens only had it for 22-30. So it just shows you the Chiefs held the ball and they were able to keep their drives moving. And Baltimore, 3 of 11 on third downs. So they were not moving the chains. Their offensive line, they could have helped those guys out because they were having trouble in terms of controlling the pass rush. Maybe if they ran the ball a little bit more physical, that could have helped out that group. But, Q, it always, after we look back and we say, oh, they should have did this, should have did that. But you got to question who's the tougher team. What team has been in a situation? Which team has made the adjustments, knows what to do? And that's what the Kansas City Chiefs were. They were the big brother to the little brother in this one.
Saw it in both games. Both games, right? I mean, this is why the playoffs are a different animal. In those games, the intensity, you ratchet up. Once the 49ers got the fumble and scored and tied it up, again, the swings, the middle rounds, the late rounds, the swing rounds, you just saw the juice, the electricity. They had a little more oomph, right? A little more fight to them. Kansas City, they've been there before, man. Like, they don't panic. And Kelsey destroyed them. Pacheco ran hard.
Yes.
Mahomes made the plays that he had to make. They exploited that secondary and the soft coverage, the zone coverage. Mahomes shredded them apart, man. So again, you got to also look at the defensive coordinator and how they were drawing up plays in that game. You know, what did we say on Friday? If you're Baltimore, who's the one offensive weapon besides Mahomes that can't kill you? It's friggin' Kelsey.
Yeah.
What does he do?
Yeah.
He killed them
He was
yesterday.
dominant. Oh, he was dominant, Q. 11 targets, 11 receptions, 116, 1 TD, you know. And everybody is going to say, oh, God, I'm tired of him and Taylor Swift. And I said, you know, let him go away and retire. Well, he doesn't look like he's ready for retirement. He has turned this thing around in the playoffs. He had a tough wild card game, made a couple drops, but since then, he was dominant against the Bills. And then this week, he was just incredible. They had no, you know, we talked about Queen and Roquan Smith over the middle, how great they were. They could not cover him. You know, Hamilton, they're all pros at safety. He was finding holes all in that defense, and he did a great job. So, you know, McDonald, their defense coordinator for the Ravens, another guy who's talking about maybe he goes to Seattle or one of these other open jobs. He has some explaining to do as well. His unit did not do what they needed to do, and they only got 2 sacks in this game. Whereas
Yeah.
Spagnuolo's unit, Spags, a lot of
Brilliant.
people very underrated. You know, your Giants guy, you remember how he shut down Patriots. Well, he looked at the tape of Lamar and he figured out what he
And
needed to
Russian
do in that
three.
unit.
Russian three, by the way, at times.
Yeah,
Russian three.
yeah, and he got Bolton, he got McDuffie, who did a great job, their young corner. They got 4 sacks in this one. Carl Aftalitis, you gotta, you know, shout him out as well. He did a great job. Chris Jones in the middle. I mean, they stepped it up and they were dominant. You know, there were points in the season where the Chiefs defense, there were some question marks, but as we said, they were ready to roll. Andy Reid struck all the chords and got this group ready to go, and they look like the defending Super Bowl champions out there.
Yeah, and Baltimore started to play panic mode. They did. I mean, they were
Yes.
just trying to chuck it up, try to get back. I mean, Beckham, what? He doesn't touch the ball until 5 minutes left. I mean, I'm not saying Beckham's the guy that he once was, but at least get him out on the field. I mean, he was targeted 6 times and he had 3 catches for his longest was 6 yards. I mean, it's just, yeah, I don't know, man. It's very hard for me to kind of quantify how a team could be so dominant in the regular season, right? And that was Baltimore. They were just truckloading teams, and your quarterback had a wonderful regular season. Look, it's not fair that people are criticizing Purdy and they won, but yet we've kind of stepped back a little bit and we're very soft with our criticism of Lamar Jackson. And I don't think that's right. I mean, Lamar Jackson had a wonderful season, but that's the regular season. I feel there are just some quarterbacks that bright lights, big stage. You know, I hear all this talk. He's only 27. Hey, I get it. But also that AFC, you know, Jacksonville is going to figure it out. Houston's coming on, right? Indianapolis has a young quarterback that was hurt. You still got Kansas City. You've got Miami. You've got, I mean, hell, you've got Buffalo. You've got
Yeah, they're in a
Miami.
tough division.
Yeah,
Don't forget their division did
you've
not
got
have a losing
Cleveland,
record in it.
Pittsburgh, Cincy. Yeah, it's point being, it's not going to get easier. Like, you still have all these teams that you're still going to have to potentially go through. And as long as Reed, Kelsey, and Mahomes, and I'll throw Pacheco in there right now, as long as they're doing what they're doing in Kansas City, it's not always going to be a soft and easy road for Baltimore.
No, and the Chiefs showed that everybody said, "Oh, they got to go on the road this year. They got to go on the road." Well, guess what? They went into 2 very hostile places, Buffalo and now Baltimore, and they knocked off the 2 top seeds in a row. So they showed now that Mahomes can go on the road and nothing's going to change. So this Chiefs team is very dangerous. I know we'll preview the Super Bowl. We'll beat it to the end in a couple weeks. So, but you know, just shows you, though, the Ravens are who everybody thought they were. Lamar still has difficulty beating teams from the pocket. And then Q, I don't know what it is. Sometimes he's just hesitant to run. Now, last week, he used his legs to his advantage. He was like, you know what, I'm getting this game done, and I want to get this win. And he ran for 100 yards last week. But this week, he was very hesitant in terms of rushing the football. He only had 8 rushes for 54 yards, but
Yeah.
that's what makes him special, getting out of the pocket. And as you said, the Chiefs has had difficulty all season stopping the run. When you ran away from Chris Jones, that was their main guy. So, the Ravens have a lot to work on. Obviously, they do have some good young pieces in Zay Flowers and a few other guys, but some of the other guys are getting a little older, like Ronnie Stanley, their great tackle, and some of the guys on that defense. So we'll see how they regroup. But there's always going to be those questions on Lamar. Can he get it done now that he's lost again and it was at home?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you start to lose as a top seed championship games at home. For years, Cowher had that issue with the Steelers. Rodgers, the same thing. Big moments, NFC championships, top seed, couldn't get it done, losing in divisional rounds. The one year the Giants waxed them 38-10. Second time around, they beat the Patriots. There's this now the narrative, right? Scrambling, running, rushing quarterback. Here you go. They can't win. You got to keep them contained in the pocket. I was going back and forth with a couple people on social, and I was like, I know he wants to run first and foremost, but no one's complaining when he's racking up MVPs and he's putting up numbers. I just think we're overlooking the defensive game plan that Kansas City elected to. Listen, we know if we flush him out of the pocket, he's going to make a mistake. We can't let him break the pocket. And I keep going back to the one loss he had against an NFC team in his career. 2 seasons ago, not this season, last year against the Giants. They kept him in check. Once he starts to roll out, that's when he makes a mistake, and that's when he had the botch snap, caught it, rolled to his right, threw across his body. The Giants got the pick with love. They went on to win the game. I just think this is who he is. Like, you're talking about being tentative in the pocket and wondering or when to take off and run. Sometimes it's innate. Sometimes it's in your DNA. Sometimes you're sitting there saying, maybe I do need to make that play. But if you go back and you watch that game again, I feel a lot of the play calling, a lot of the offensive play calling was just this. Let me get a 5-yard out. Let me try to get a hitch for 6 or 7 yards. And you're basically throwing the ball a yard or two down the field. I mean, you got guys flanked out wide, and now you're asking your receivers to make plays. They don't have receivers, say like the 49ers or the Lions, can break tackles and make plays. So I also attribute to the play calling yesterday. And I just don't know, man. Buffalo, Miami, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Houston, Jacksonville, Kansas City, the Raiders, the Chargers, if healthy. AFC it's stacked, man. It really is.
Yeah, and they're not sure they're going to get back. Look, think a couple of years ago, Blake Bortles and the Jaguars. They were right there. Everybody talks about the interception and the penalty that nullified it and everything, and they just never got back, that Jaguars team, and then it got broken up. So, I'm not saying that's going to happen to Baltimore, but a lot of questions, as you said, in terms of their execution and keeping their head and just having overall toughness. And that's what the Chiefs had in this one. Lamar, spectacular talent. You saw that on that pass that's batted. He beats the guy, the ball, catches it, completion to himself. Right. But in the end, they just did not make enough plays. And then in terms of roster, Zay Flowers is a good young talent, but there's not much else on that offense, particularly with Mark Andrews being a little banged up. But they forgot their identity as well, Q. They were a downhill rushing the football team, and that's what they did first and foremost to the Texans the week before. They ran up for over 200 yards. This week, they got away from it. Everybody's going to say, oh, it's the new NFL, it's pass happy. Well, it was a little cold. It was a little rainy out there. Everything was set up for them to rush the football, but they decided, as you said, to go to the quick passing game, which did not work.
Yeah. It's funny too, and we've got a lot of time to talk about the Super Bowl and preview it and get into in the trenches, both lines of scrimmage, the props and everything. But you mentioned the play that Jackson made, and Romo's waxing poetic is the greatest play ever in a championship game. CBS, just to kind of close it out and take it a different direction. I like Greg Olson and I like Kevin Burkhardt. I think very smooth. I think Olsen's a lot more engaged than Romo has been. And I think Kevin Burkhardt is a pro. He's very good at his job. People are saying, well, doesn't have that big game feel. I tend to disagree. Nance and Romo have zero chemistry. And I felt even during the season, because they put all the 425, the national spotlight games, CBS gets those games, right? CBS getting the Super Bowl in Vegas in a couple of weeks. I'm listening to broadcasts, and half the time I'm thinking, is he even watching the game? Is he even engaged? And then the other half of the time, he's trying to crack jokes. Now, as a commentator, there's a time to ad lib and be playful, right? But when you're constantly doing it, it sounds like, you're tossing jokes to your grandfather or your uncle or something, try to get a response out of them. I think they have a major mistake on their hands. And, I listen to the broadcast and I take notes and I write down my stuff, and I just listen to the voices. And I was like, what's going on, man? Like, Romo was the talk a couple of years ago. I can see the plays ahead of time. And now it's like, you're stating the obvious, dude. Like, I think they have a major.
And what do you bring to the table? A lot of people don't like Collinsworth, but he brings a lot to the table in terms of just knowledge and just, keeping the game flow going. And Jim Nance is a true professional. So you wonder, how that's going to work out. Now, Tom Brady is signed up to go with which one? Is it Fox or CBS?
He's supposed to replace
so
Olsen.
He's going to Fox. So, looks like Romo's here to say they want him to be their guy, but in the end, as you said, Q, is he entertaining? What is he bringing to the broadcast? Obviously the numbers, everybody's going to look at that. But sometimes, as you said, he's just not keeping the flow of the game. He's like watered down Madden. He's trying to be that guy, but he's just not him.
Yeah, it's like I said, there's so much to take away from yesterday's action. And again, missed opportunities for Baltimore, missed opportunities for Lions. We'll dive a little more into some of the coaching carousel and the movement with the coordinators, especially the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll do that later on in the week. But Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 1029, The Game, Broad Street South on X at Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us. Give him a follow. Will you have the show this evening or tomorrow?
Well, looking forward to it's this evening, and
Nice.
we're going to break down this week's action, and then we'll start talking a little bit about the coaching carousel, as you were saying, some of the openings that are still out there, and then maybe get a little into Super Bowl preview. But there's a lot to break down in terms of Super Bowl.
Yes, there is. And I had to rip up a couple of tickets yesterday in frustration, but that's okay. Of course, he's kind enough to join us on BYP with Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd, appreciate it, pal. We'll do it again later in the week. Thank you.
All right, Q. Thanks for having me on.